In Luke, we've talked about the birth of Christ. We've talked about what happens next after he's born. We talked about Jesus and Joseph and Mary going off to Egypt, and we've talked about them returning home and them coming to Jerusalem. And so they went to Jerusalem and they did everything that was required of a young Jewish boy to learn, and they started to teach him and do all of the things that they were required to do under Jewish law. And so it says in Luke chapter 2, verses 39 through 40, when Joseph and Mary had done everything required by the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own town of Nazareth. And the child grew and became strong. He was filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was on him. And so this is before Jesus is in the temple as a boy, and this is before all that, and before Jesus grows up and becomes the man. And so just this little scripture just mentions them as parents just taking responsibility for their son and his faith. And even though he's the Son of God, they still had to train him up, and they still had to be wise in their decision making as parents. That reminds me of how right now I know that we're faced with a lot going on with COVID, and we're faced with a lot of difficulty. Some of us are confined to our homes. Some of us are debating on whether it's time that we step back, or whether we feel safe to continue coming to church and doing the things that we love to do. Some of us have no choice, and some of us do. And so right now there's a lot of uneasiness and a lot of questions in the air, it feels like. And as MCC is stepping back just for a tiny brief amount of time, and we'll be coming back in person January 10th, as this is happening, we're kind of faced as parents once again to remind us that we can't rely on the church to train our children. We have to do it ourselves. We have to read scripture with our children. We have to follow God's laws and make sure that we're teaching our kids that, making wise decisions and sharing that with them. You know, sometimes we can get complacent and just think, well, we're going to church on Sundays, or we're watching online church this weekend, or we watch this Devo, and that is so important. All those things are so important, but also how we live our lives and how our children are always watching and how we're always teaching them. That right there is the most important thing, because God will work in our kids' lives, but we also have to show them how to listen to him, how to obey him, how to be a person who follows God's laws. So as we're facing this uneasiness again, we can have confidence that if we follow scripture, we can train our children just like Mary and Joseph did. Just like Mary and Joseph had to look for wise decisions and make sure that they were listening to God, we can have faith and confidence that if we follow scripture and if we live day to day with our children for God, that they will grow to know and love him.